The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to this morning's webinar with your host, James McDonald.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea, and I'd like to start by welcoming our participants in helpline call, our open forum helpline call. We can talk about anything you like. If you have any questions whatsoever, maybe they're marketing related, you ran some ads, you've got some questions about that, or the follow-up system, any of the unique selling propositions, you're looking to grow your team, you're looking to hire, put in systems in place in your business, whatever it is, the sky's the limit. We can literally talk about anything you want. So let me begin by welcoming Craig and Rick to our helpline here today. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you, Rick?
Well, I'm great, Craig. Thanks for asking. How are you, James?
I'm very good. It reminds me of a circular firing squad. I like that. Hey, you know what, guys? We have some awesome questions here, but before we get to the questions, and also we're going to open up the lines and let you, any of you that are logged onto the webinar and you want to ask your questions in an audio format, we're going to leave plenty of time for you to do that as well. So you want to type questions, you want to ask, sky's the limit, we will get to your questions, okay? I also had some questions from the Friday ad clinic call that I wanted to address to everybody on today's helpline call as well, because these are questions that are being not just helpful for the asker of the question, but for everybody as well. But before we do that, we were on the pre-conference here talking about participation and how important it is that all of you make it a point to participate in all of these calls. We're really talking about maybe, 3-4 hours a week that you are spending working on your business. That's out of the entire week, spending 3 or 4 hours working on your business, getting on these webinars, and really studying the system to make sure you don't fall back in your old ways. And it was, it's always disappointing to us when we find that sometimes our students, although they want to, they say they're too busy to involve themselves in all of the training and all of the opportunities to learn more. And that was our discussion. So Craig, I wanted to throw it over to you and just talk a little bit about that, because it's something that we're very adamant about.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of resources that everyone must do their best to try to attend to participate live onto, because you can, although we do record all of the webinars, if you miss one, you definitely want to make sure that you go onto the coaching site and watch that webinar over again. There's nothing like participating live. And our attendance last week was down a little bit. I know a lot of you just came back from the conference and you've been away from your business, but if everybody can make an effort to be on the calls that we have planned this week, some of the webinars were an hour and a half plus long. We're going to try to keep this to about an hour here today, and if you can mark all of these webinars into your day timer and do your best to try to be on them, that would be great. I mean, we're really here trying to help you, but if you want to understand the system, your participation is really critical. So today we've got our helpline call. We'll go for about an hour, and then on Thursday we've got the role play conversion call, also at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. That'll last about an hour. And then our ad clinic on Friday, 11 a.m. So it's real easy. Monday, Thursday, and Friday, all the calls at the same time, all the webinars, rather, at the same time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
And Rick, one of the, I know that, it may be 10 years or more, but it doesn't seem like that long ago that you were in the same position as our coaching students here. And I think what we hear often is, oh, I'm just really busy. I'm way too busy to come on all of the calls. Maybe you could address that in terms of how you did when you were the student as opposed to the teacher.
Well, look, Craig's pretty politically correct when he reminds everybody of the importance of these calls. And I'm, me, James, I'm a little bit more direct than some people. Sure. And I think this. Sure. If you're not going to come on the call that's part of the program, then guess what? You're shortchanging yourself. That's what it boils down to. The system is built around a correct curriculum that's presented the way we present it. We can't customize our approach for everybody that we know. We have a system for teaching people the Quantum Leap program, and we have a system for doing it well. And as always, I say this, put those calls, put those webinars as recurring appointments in your day timer, as if they are listing appointments. You'd never miss a listing appointment. Well, these calls, an hour, a couple of days a week, 3 days a week, plus your call with your coach or with Craig, it's 4 or 5 hours a week. Look, if business isn't good enough, you came on board with us so it could get better. Let us teach you how to make it better. And that was the advice you gave me, James, back in 2002. And I had this conversation with you. James, there's so many calls, all this stuff to do, all this emailing, all these things you want. And you said, Rick, if you want to learn, simply do it. It's really a simple process. Just do it. And
Well,
I always say,
the
just immerse
webinars-
yourself in it. That's what I say.
Yeah, Rick, the webinars that we conduct will add clarity. You know, if you feel overwhelmed and
Absolutely.
you're unsure as to what to do, the webinars and the question and answer periods like today should help make things better because we'll add clarity.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
speaking of answering your questions, I think we should get right into that now. James, you said you've got a few questions from last week that have not been answered. So why don't we start with them? And then while you're listening to James answer some of the questions from last week, if you want to type your question in, or of course we'll take audio questions, you can you can start typing your questions in now. And James, why don't you begin?
Yeah, let me address some of these questions here first and get your input. Okay, the first question is this: is there any use to sending small volume directed postcards, say to high turnover golf course community? And that question came to us from Tim Niles after the ad clinic call on Friday. So I guess the idea is this: I've got a golf course community, and we're not talking about thousands of properties. We're talking about hundreds. Or maybe a few hundred properties. Is there any use in doing direct mail to only a few hundred is the question. Now, the reason that we recommend sending out 5,000 at a time or more is because you're much more likely to get a consistent, predictable response when you send out in volume. You know, if you send out 10, well, it's just far too small a sampling. I know that's an exaggeration, but it's far too small a sampling to really be able to test it accurately and get any kind of, measurable response that you can then predict for the future. However, if somebody said, well, look, I can either afford to send out a few hundred to this area or none at all, well, then obviously it's always better to do something rather than nothing. But ideally, what you'd prefer to do is send these out. How about this? You could send out using Every Door Direct 2,500. We'll split the difference. You can send out 2,500 for $350. That's what it would cost you. $350. You send out 2,500 of these to strategic golf course areas with high turnover in your marketplace. And, you know, if you did that, you could probably bank on generating anywhere from 0.5% upwards of 1.5% requests for evaluations, as long as you did it properly. Anything you guys want to add to that?
Nope, I agree.
Okay. Next question. There is a mid-sized newspaper in my town that offers a brand builder's ad for a discount. Okay, a brand builder's ad, it's called, for a discount. But you have to run an ad 3 times a week. If you do that, should I rotate 3 different ads or do the same ad, the home evaluation, for example, all 3 days? They are business card size ads. That's the size of the space that we're talking about here. So, Rick, what do you suggest, or Craig?
Okay, I'll take this one. I would recommend that you test different messages, let the marketplace tell you which one gets the best response, and then go forward with just the ads that work the best. So being consistent is a smart thing to do once you've determined which campaign will get you the best response.
Right. So maybe starting off with the online home evaluation is a great idea. On the next day, maybe you could do a list of distress sales or high demand properties in your marketplace. On day 3, you could do find out what homes in your neighborhood are selling for. I mean, you can test so many different offers, and they will not all generate the same response. Some will be better than others. Once you figure out what the best ones are, then you can be consistent with those. That's great.
And James, that's what I did with the postcards as well. Keep in mind, I didn't start off sending out 20,000 postcards every other week. I started off, as you suggested, sending out 5,000 postcards and tested many different messages on those postcards. Once, though, I determined what the winning combination, what to say on both sides of the postcard, what worked the best, that's when I ramped it up to 10,000 and then 20,000. The only reason that you might want to send out, say, 900 postcards to a golf course community is that you could customize the headline. So if it was the online home evaluation campaign, where the headline might say, find out what your home is worth online, if you're going to Glenaway Estates, the golf course community, that headline could say, find out what your Glenaway Estates home is worth online. Okay, now I did do that, and I would still send out 5,000 postcards, but maybe 900 go to Glenaway Estates, and then another 900 go over to Stonehaven Estates, and then maybe another 900 go to a different community in Aurora. So you can still send out a total of 5,000 postcards, but you can have the printer customize the headline, and if you wish, the domain name. So everything else is the same except for the headline and the domain name for tracking purposes.
Okay. Here's a good one for you, Rick.
Okay.
In the online newspapers, there were no real estate ads. Should I still post ads on the newspaper's website, even if there were no real estate ads?
Well, I don't think it's going to be the most effective way to create leads. First thing I would look at with a newspaper would be the offline classified site. If there's a real estate section that's attached to that newspaper, then I would use the newspaper. And if my ads ended up online, so be it. But just to go solely in a medium that doesn't have real estate is probably not the most effective use of our money.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that and you're going to test it, then remember this, it's direct response. You do not need to test it for 6 months to determine that it either is or isn't effective. If it is going to be effective, it'll be effective immediately. And if it isn't, then you know that whatever that message is wasn't the right message. Now, Craig, here's a good question. You talk about remnant space in local newspapers. Is there a script for negotiating remnant space? Or how about this? How about just a couple of bullet points, Craig, when talking to the newspaper about remnant space?
Okay, well, the key here is to make sure you're talking to the right person, but you're really just going to ask if you could purchase at a discount some of the remnant space that the publication has. If you're having this conversation with the sales rep who gets paid on commission, they're not going to be very motivated to help you save money because it means a pay cut for them. So their motivation, the sales rep, that might be the person you're speaking with, they take care of your account, right? They're probably going to discourage you, tell you it doesn't exist or they can't do that. And that's exactly what they said to me. But I saw every day that it did exist, and you will too. If you're taking a look at any of your local publications, newspapers, you're going to see these remnant space deals, or opportunities. This will be extra space that the publication has that they either use to promote themselves or they give away to different charities. So you really need to speak to the editor or somebody above the sales rep who's got a totally different motivation. You see, the editor really cares about the profitability of the publication. So getting something from you, right, getting some money from you is better than getting no money. And that's what they're getting right now for that space. So you've got to make sure you go a little bit higher up in the food chain and talk to somebody that will be open to this, because many of you get shut down at the lower level, at the sales rep level, for that very reason.
Yep.
Okay, here's a good question. Okay, and Rick, this is a good one for you. You'll have to think back in your memory banks here. What's the most inexpensive ad we can start running today?
Well,
because there are a number of ways you can look at that.
I mean, I don't know how we define inexpensive. It's all relative to an area. But I'm going to come back and probably say something you're not expecting me to say, and that is advertise or market your listing correctly. And Craig and I have been chatting about this a lot lately. We need to do a better job with our listings. And it can be a quarter or an eighth of a page in the real estate section that features 3 listings. And the way we advertise a listing is not to feature the property, but to create a request from a prospect for information on one of those properties. And I'll tell you, James, that was my #1 lead generator, was my properties. And I advertised a lot of them, but when you do it correctly, you get a constant barrage of requests for more information. So that would be my first recommendation.
Yeah, you know what? I might add to that as well is that, the truth is this: to run no ad at all is very inexpensive. You just don't run anything, and that doesn't cost you any money at all. Now, I know that's not what you're looking for here, but this is what really matters at the end of the day: is the ad that yields you the biggest return on your investment is the least expensive to run. If we run an ad that was $1 but it yielded us absolutely no return, that's more expensive than an ad that was $10 but yielded us several deals.
Right.
It's not even close. So you've got to look at it in terms of why you're doing this. We all chose to get into business, to own a business. You chose to do that. It didn't choose you. You chose it. And to run a business means that we're going to have to invest in that business, and lead generation is one of those. Now, it can be inexpensive. We talk about running ads online. Craigslist doesn't cost any money. It does, however, cost time. So it is not inexpensive. It is expensive to run free ads on Craigslist because it costs you your time to do it enough to yield you the same results of spending a little bit of money in a print publication, for example, or advertising your property listing effectively, as Rick is talking about. You've got to sort of reconsider your definition of expensive and inexpensive.
The other thing I'll just add to that, James, if you don't mind, is all of us who list homes, we have the frontage of our home is perhaps 60 or 70 feet wide. And get your head around this, guys. What are you doing with your for sale signage? Are you simply plopping a common-looking for sale sign on the front lawn of a house, or are you using that as an opportunity to create leads? Now, if you go into the coaching website and look at many of the pictures of signage that most of our successful members are using, you're going to see some absolute killer lead generation techniques from signage alone. And by the way, you're doing signs anyway. Why not make them better? Why not add a simple sign writer that encourages a buyer to call you and simply ask, how does that program work? Or how do I get that? Or why not put a second sign out front of your listing that has people call into your hotline? Again, we don't have people call in the hotline to sell the house. We do that to create leads. And James, that's the easiest way I know of to create leads, is to do your listings correctly. Sorry to hog the call there.
No, that's great advice. It's what everybody's looking for. Craig, here's a question that is pretty timely, because we've talked a lot about the website feature, the HDX that the Success website have available, where prospects can actually search for properties and find MLS properties directly on the website. But the question is this: when a lead requests a distressed property report, for example, should I forward them automatically to the distressed home list on my website? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that way of thinking of, should they immediately access those properties? Should you create the properties? What's the best way of doing this? What's the thinking behind the system?
Okay, well, you can do a couple of things here. First of all, if you're driving to one of our landing pages, it offers a list of distress sales. You control the information, and you're going to send out the buyer a one-time snapshot, for example, of all the distress sale properties or all the fixer-uppers, whatever it is they requested. And we've taught you at the Super Conference that really what you want to do is get together with the buyers now and sign them to a buyer agency agreement before you just give away the farm and email them every day all the properties that match their criteria.
Or worse, give them access to all of the properties on your website.
Right. So that's that's the deal, is you want to get them together with them and use the hot list of properties as leverage for that meeting, so you can sign them to an exclusive buyer agency agreement. And as soon as they sign the buyer agency agreement, you don't really care where they're getting information from, because you're going to be compensated for the time you spend with them. Now, if you drive them to the HDX site through Success website, I believe the buyer is able to look at, 2 or 3 properties and see all the detailed information, but eventually when they click on whatever it is, listing 2 or 3, they're asked to opt in. Okay, so now they have to provide all of their information. So you have a lead. Okay, so now you have a lead. Now the question is how do I compel that buyer to come and meet with me? Well, you've got to make it sound like they're going to get something better than they already have. And we can, in fact, offer them something better. You can offer them a list of all the for sale by owners in the area. You can offer them a list of all the homes that have just come off the market. You can offer to also send them priority access to any new listings that you or your company gets. But the key is no matter how you get the prospect to raise their hands, you've got to get together with them so you can sign them to a buyer agency agreement, or otherwise you've demonstrated to the buyer that you're just willing to email them all the information on a daily basis, and believe me, they'll eventually buy a home, but it might not be through you. Okay, so we want to tease prospects with the ad. The ad has one job, which is to drive them to the website, and the only job of the website or the landing page is to compel these buyer or seller prospects to come forward with their contact information. Now it's up to you to dictate your rules of engagement. Are you going to meet with every buyer or seller? Of course not. That's why we're going to use the questions, the probing questions, in the universal callback script to help you determine the motivation and timing of the prospect so you can decide which buyers and sellers you want to meet with. Okay, but you also have to have very good language to make that happen, to make them want to meet with you, because you can't make them meet with you. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Okay, last question. Are editorial ads much more expensive given the size? And let me just weigh in on this one a little bit here. First of all, what we recommend, and we really try to stress, is that you want to find the small local newspapers to run editorial ads in. You won't see our platinum students or our longtime students like Rick running these editorial ads in the great big daily newspaper that services in a huge area that they don't service. Instead, what you'll find is the small local community papers, number one, are much more cooperative in running the editorial ads effectively, but also they're far less expensive, and they only go out to residents within the marketplace that you want to target. So it just makes so much more sense in every way. So are they more expensive than running a smaller ad? Sure. They're more expensive than running no ad at all as well. But that doesn't mean they are expensive because we're targeting those smaller local newspapers. And again, what does expensive mean to you? Expensive means you put out money, however the amount of money, and you didn't yield a return. That's expensive. Inexpensive is you paid $100 to run an editorial ad, you generated 10 leads, and of those 10 leads, you took 3 listings and got two commission checks. That is not expensive. That is a tremendous return on investment, and you would do that again and again and again and again. Part of this obsession with expensive is because, as Craig talks about, and I just think this is so effective and true, in real estate, for some reason, somewhere along the line, somebody decided that it was okay in real estate to spend a lot to get a little. That's how real estate advertising works. Right. You promote yourself. You spend lots of money on yourself. Pictures of you with your great big hat and dogs sticking out of your purse and leaning over Bentleys and all these things. You spend money advertising your listings. All these things that we spend money on traditionally, we expect not to yield a response. We expect it. We know they're expensive. I've got a billboard. It costs me hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. But I know it doesn't yield anything, but that's just real estate. we explain it away by saying, well, that's just real estate. You spend a lot, you get a little. It doesn't work that way. That's not how this works. Direct response marketing, the only marketing that is acceptable for you to embark on is marketing where you spend a little and you yield a lot. Completely different mindset. So, we've got to change with our students. And Rick, it isn't easy, right? I mean, you came from that same position, didn't you?
Oh, for sure. For sure. But here's some things we all have to be, we have to hit ourselves over the head with the logic hammer, as Craig says. If you're going to sit down with a print ad publication like a weekly newspaper, you have to do some things to your advantage. If it's true, one editorial ad on one day of the week, one time, you're going to be charged full retail rate on that ad, full retail line rate for that ad. Well, why not do this? Number one, commit to some time. Number two, commit to some space. Why not put together a bundle with your local ad rep's boss, if necessary, to include a display ad, a classified ad, maybe a remnant space spot, and maybe an editorial. When you start to bundle and take up space with the newspaper, now you're in a position to negotiate an absolute cheaper rate. And that's what all of us have done over the years. Hey, we are negotiators. It's what we do for a living. The best way to deal with the ad rep's retail rate is look at them in the eye and say, are you kidding? You have to do better. But I'm willing to do this if you can do better. When you start to add things, James, and bundle things in, the deals come thick and fast.
Yep. That's great advice. Okay, so that's it for our questions here. Now, Andrea, I'm going to throw it over to you, and I'd love to take any questions that the group has posed here.
Yes, sir. We have several hands raised for audio questions, so we'll go for those first. If you haven't done so already, please type your question now or click the hand icon if you would like to address your call. Jim Anderson, your line is open.
Hi. My question has to do with choosing the media outlets. And I'm finding, I saw a research report that 90% of people who are home shopping in my market are actually looking online. So I'm thinking that I probably want to focus my efforts more on some of these sites like homes.com or Zillow.com, and so I'm wondering what kind of criteria I should use to choose.
Okay, well, Jim, let's be clear on that study that you're referencing. I believe the question they ask buyers is where buyers start their search. And 80 or 90% of buyers say they start their search online. But that doesn't mean that they're not searching in other places. They may start there.
Yeah.
But a buyer is a buyer is a buyer, right? For example, let's say that you were thinking of buying a new car. You might start by going to Auto Trader. That might be the easiest place to start, right? It's easy. You can do that from your home. But that wouldn't preclude you from looking in the newspaper or visiting car dealerships or picking up other auto magazines. So this is, this is very important that we don't get focused on any one medium, okay, until we've actually proven to ourselves that it is the right thing to do. So, yes, I want you to run online vehicles. So you should be doing Craigslist. You should be doing Google pay-per-click. Rick Brash is with us here today. He's had some success with Facebook, and Rick maybe can talk a little bit about that. But Rick will be the first one that tells you, even though he does all of these things, he also does a lot of print advertising, and the results that he gets from all these things cause him to continue doing some of it, and negative results cause him to not do some things. So Rick, maybe you can talk about things that are working well for you and some of the things that you've tested that just didn't work.
Well, Jim, I've chatted about this a lot in the past, and I know, Jim, you're working with a little bit of Facebook marketing, but the way we know, and Craig's alluded to this already, the way we know if something is working or not is twofold. Number one, by actual leads created, and secondly, before that is actual traffic created from the ad. And that's one of the reasons we continue to monitor or track what's going on with an advertising piece. And it's really easy to say, well, this doesn't work or that doesn't work, when in fact, maybe the ad is wrong for the current marketplace. Maybe the ad itself didn't speak to the right demographic. It's a constant testing in every medium outlet that's available locally. And that's what I believe. I mean, there's a couple of publications here locally where I live that we never thought would have worked for real estate. Some downtown-specific publications that hardly even talked about real estate. But when they ran a full-page feature or a full feature article on the downtown real estate core, they called me and said, would you be willing to put some ads in? I said, absolutely. And we listed a whole bunch of condos downtown because of the ads that ran in that magazine that normally wouldn't have looked like a real estate-driven publication. So we just have to keep testing, Jim, is what we have to do. Continually testing and finding out where local consumers are going to find their answers to their questions about buying or selling locally. And as Craig alluded to, it's probably the full gamut of absolutely everything locally. Some bigger, yes, some smaller. And it's true. The majority of people, Jim, do go online. They do go to the internet. They do Google 3-bedroom houses for sale in your area with an ocean view. They do that, absolutely. And as Craig said, we need to be there as well. But to say something doesn't work because of a percentage, I don't know. I'd rather create my own data and make a decision for my own marketing because I know how to create data very quickly with direct response.
I think from the results that I've been getting, because I've been tracking, you know, we've talked about this, the print ads that I've been doing, I'm getting so few leads from them by comparison to what I'm doing with Google pay-per-click that it's driving the cost of my leads way up.
Yep.
I'm spending less money on Google pay-per-click, and it's producing probably at minimum 2/3 of the leads that I'm getting.
So now you have some data to begin this tracking process with. But what's to say we haven't found the correct ad yet for the print medium? What's to say the ads you're working with now or the two you've worked with are the bombs to use locally? We haven't gathered that information yet. And I'm still going to maintain what Craig says, that if we have a good selection across 3 or 4 local pillars, you're going to have great lead generation, some leads better than others someday, but that's the nature of the game, is using a little bit of everything.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I'm having difficulty figuring out where I'm going to find these other print sources because I've been scanning the different places I can go, and the only other place I can think of as a print ad that would be a possibility is the Orange County Register, which covers a larger area than what I'm targeting.
Does the Orange County Register do a specific section for, like, say, a specific city that they cover? Like, here's the edition for your city. Here's the edition for that city. Do they do that?
They have community papers, and that's what I've been using, the Laguna Niguel News, and they actually just recently, this last week, switched that over to a section in the Orange County Register rather than being a community paper, and so they probably do have those for the different cities in the area.
You know, one of the things that we chatted about, you and I, a couple of weeks ago, was perhaps looking at your market from a little different perspective. I think where you are, you have a higher than average sale price, and I thought that going with the luxury foreclosure ad or the luxury fixer-upper marketing campaign would be a really great one, whether it be in print or online.
And that actually has worked because the leads that I've been getting off the luxury campaign have been bringing in buyers that are looking for higher priced homes, and
Right.
And the market research that I did looking on real estate statistics in the MLS is that the sales of homes are actually in that higher range, in the range that I'm actually getting leads for now. So
Awesome.
that's improved.
Awesome. You're on the way.
Yeah, Rick, I think something else that's important to look at as well is not just the number of leads, but also the quality of what happens with those leads. And sometimes it takes a little time for you to be able to determine that. So in other words, we generate fewer leads from the print ads. But if we track the results of those leads that we generate from the print ad, what if we found that a much higher percentage of those print ad leads, from whatever campaign it was that you ran, more of them yielded sales and commissions, and they resulted in a much higher return on investment than, say, a Google pay-per-click campaign that, sure, it generates tons and tons of leads, but expressed as a percentage, a much lower number of those leads to result in any kind of business for you.
Well, James, let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example of exactly what you're talking about. When I ran the online home evaluation campaign, that little classified ad cost me, I don't know, $50 to run it, $70 in some publications. I didn't generate very many leads. I might generate 3 or 4 leads. And some people might look at that and they say, well, that's not very good, 3 or 4 leads every time you run the ad. But it's the quality of the leads versus running, let's say, a distress sale ad on Craigslist where it didn't cost me anything, and I might generate dozens of leads. So here's how most people would look at that. Most people would say, well, free's better than paying $50 or $70 for the ad. And they would certainly, most people would say, generating dozens of leads from the ad is better than an ad that only generates 3 or 4. But here's the problem with that. I only have to call 3 or 4 leads to get at least 1 listing appointment. So don't just focus on quantity, focus on the quality of the leads. Here's the question. Would you rather call 3 or 4 prospects to book an appointment and get paid? Or would you rather have to sift through dozens, call dozens and dozens of prospects to get that same appointment? And for me, what was expensive was my time. I'd rather spend $50 or $70 on an ad, even if I'm only generating 3 or 4 leads. If they're high-quality leads, that's way better than running the distress sale ad on Craigslist where I had to call 2 dozen leads to maybe get an appointment that's not even as good as the listing appointment I'm going to get with the other strategy. So we've got to really, not just look at the number of leads or how much it costs. You see, a lot of the questions we've had this morning are about the wrong thing. It's about how much it costs or how many leads we generate. Let's look at this from the 1,000-foot level. What we should be most interested in is return on investment for money and time. If I run something on Craigslist and I generate a whole bunch of leads, but I don't get anywhere with anybody, I've made 0. So the cost of the ad was 0, but in the return column, I made nothing. Okay, or I spend $50 or even $100 on an ad. I generate 3 or 4 leads. A lot of people would be distracted with that and say, well, that doesn't work. I didn't generate enough leads to make it worthwhile, because we start thinking about cost per lead. Well, if the thing cost $100 and I only generated 4 leads, I'm spending $25 a lead. That doesn't make sense. And I'm saying I'm totally okay with that. If you sold 1 home and your average commission is $15,000, you would never stop doing that if you look at it that way. So I just want everyone to look at everything. Look at the complete picture. Don't get distracted by the minutia of free versus, this costs money, so, anything that costs money must be bad. It's not true. Some of the best marketing campaigns that you run and will continue to run may be expensive as far as what the ad costs, but it may, from the 1,000-foot level, be the cheapest or most effective thing that you do in terms of actual return on investment when you factor in your time and you factor in the amount of money you make from that one particular campaign.
Okay, our next question, Donna Hewitt, your mic is open.
I have 2 newspapers here that are fitting the bill. Now my question, One is, they come to my house. That's why I have them. They both come to the house, so they're perfect for what we're doing here. My question is, when I'm running a classified ad and it says, I'm looking here on the website, youruniquedomainname.com. Does this mean I need to find a domain name for every individual report? Like, for example, does it have to be distresssale.com or 13 mistakes you'll make when moving to a larger house.com? Or do I need, well, you know what I mean. Or can I just use one.com?
Okay, Donna, only if you want to track. You could physically use one domain, and you could run 20 different ads in 20 different places and drive all to the exact same domain name. But if you want to track how one ad works versus the other ad, or one newspaper works versus another newspaper, or how your online marketing is going to work in comparison to your print, then you're going to need a unique domain name.
For each individual ad that I run?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Remember this, just because you have access to all of these reports, you only need the domain names if you're advertising them, right? So if you're going to run, 4 ads that offer 4 different things, then you need 4 domain names. Okay. But just because there are reports that you have available to you, if you're not advertising them, you do not need domain names for them. Right? These are just pages that exist on your website. This is information that exists on your website. But think of it this way. The domain names are related to the ad that you run. If you're not running an ad for that, you do not need a domain name. And that way, you can procure domain names as you need them. Here's another thing as well. You're not going to get distresssales.com. Long gone. And it's not as good anyway. What you want to do is you want to get a domain name that describes your local area and distress sales. So in other words, let's say I was in an area called Silver Springs. I would procure domain names. I would put into the, when searching for domain names, I would put in Silver Springs distressed homes and see what comes up. See what availability there is in using what I'm offering and where I'm offering it. Those are the key ingredients. It's almost like this. The domain name should describe what is being offered in the ad. That's how you know it's a good domain name. Oh, okay. So, distressedhomesilversprings.com. That's pretty good. I know exactly what I can expect to get when I click on that. Yep. But remember, you're getting them on a need basis. Not, Craig has, 100 ads, so I need 100 domain names. No. You get them based on the number of ads that you're going to run.
Okay. Thank you.
Hope that helps.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Janet Classy. Your phone line is open.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi, Janet.
Okay. I didn't know the mute thing kind of confused me. There's a buyer's guide newspaper that's delivered weekly to everybody, but it just has display and classified ads. And do you think an editorial ad would work in a paper that just has ads?
No. No, the whole idea of an editorial is it is an article, all right? It's an article that runs in the newspaper. It's a newsworthy article. And here's the truth is, you know what? You can test anything. Anything is a worthy test, but we might as well start with what is most likely going to get you the best results. And I can tell you that starting with an editorial in a publication like that is very unlikely to be the best approach. What's likely to be better is that instead you run an ad either promoting a unique selling proposition and associating that unique selling proposition with you, or making a universal offer.
Unique selling proposition.
Your home sold in 60 days guaranteed, or I'll sell it for free. $5,000 savings on your home purchase guaranteed. A USP, but a USP that is associated with you, the real estate agent. That would be one approach. The other approach would be to run. So
that would be like a branded ad?
That would be branded, correct. That would be branded. Okay. And the other approach that you would take would be to run something unbranded and make a universal offer. distress sales, bank foreclosures, great deals, free list with pictures, maps, and addresses. Find out what your home is worth online. Free quick over-the-net home evaluation. Those are examples of universal offers that you could run in a publication like that. And way down the list would be editorial style ads in a publication like that. So I'm not dissuading you from testing. I am saying, however, there are other things that we would start first, test first, before an editorial ad in a publication like you described.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. Otherwise, I'll come back and ask something else, but I can't think of anything else. Okay.
Thank you. All right, Andrea, let's take a couple more.
Yes, sir. Our next guest, Martha Stray. Your mic is open.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Martha.
Hi, good morning. I have a question about the postcards. Can smaller postcards, like say if you had 4 postcards which are in, you know, the size of split up in a sheet of paper, you get 4 postcards versus a sheet of paper where you get 2 postcards. Is there any thing that you can say about if we send out smaller postcards versus regular postcards? What have you found with that?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's Craig. I would send the biggest postcard you can because it doesn't cost any more money.
Okay.
All right, so find out from the post office what's the biggest. We call these oversized postcards. What's the largest one that you can send out? And you're spending 14.2 cents to send it out. So, you know, the theory is let's make it as big as we possibly can. It's not the printing, it's the mailing part that's the expensive part.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Okay, our next guest is Bob Connor. Your mic is open. Bob, did you have a question today?
Yeah, good morning. This is Bob. What is the best time to make follow-up calls?
Okay, for me, Bob, I made my calls. You schedule it into your daytime. I call it a perfect week. So my follow-up calls were scheduled right into my daytimer, just like a listing appointment would be scheduled into my daytimer. And I tried to, you know, stick to this perfect week. You'll find that once you create a perfect week and you stick to it, you'll actually, you know, reach your goals. So Monday evenings, I returned all the phone calls from the weekend. So I would get on the phone right after dinner about 7 o'clock and call till about 8:30, 9 o'clock. I did not go past 9 o'clock. Then you might want to do Wednesdays or Thursdays in the evenings. Now here's a little secret I'll share with you. When leads come in, if they have a daytime number, if they have a cell number, or the prospects left their work number, then I would code those differently on my contact manager. I used Agent Office, so I could color code my daytime numbers, and I would make them black, and they would fall to the bottom of my daytimer. So when I got to work each day, I would scroll down to the bottom of my daytimer, and I knew that any of the leads that were colored black, I knew I had a daytime number. So between buyer appointments and listing appointments, when you've got a little bit of extra time, using this coding system, you can squeeze in a few daytime calls. Because here's the problem. Most people are available, more available, I think we could agree, in the evenings and on the weekends. But that's problematic for you and I, because that's the very time that most buyers and sellers can meet with us. So, you know, how do you do 2 things at once? How are you supposed to be meeting with the buyers and sellers in the evenings and weekends and calling them and making return calls at the same time? So try to squeeze in as many of the calls as you can during the day using this system for those that you have day numbers for. That'll free up your evenings so you don't have to make as many calls in the evenings, but you still will have to make some. But it'll give you more time to actually meet with the buyers and sellers. So you might want to do what I did, which is Monday night I'll make no listing appointments. It'll just be for callbacks. Maybe Tuesday evening you're available to show buyers and you know, go out on appointments. And then maybe Wednesday is another night you might want to just make your calls. and just kind of alternate them like that. I also found Saturday mornings were a very good time to get a hold of people. I would get on the phone around 10 a.m. and I would call till about 1 o'clock. After 1 o'clock, I found a lot of people, I was getting a lot of no answers. People are out for the day at the shopping mall or whatever. And then on Sundays, I didn't make calls.
Okay, great. Good information. Thank you.
Okay, but yeah, whatever works for you. Hopefully that my perfect week makes sense to you. Let's go back to
Craig, let me just preface that whole thing by saying this, though. Okay, the best time to call back a lead is as quickly as possible. Okay, so if you're talking about follow-up calls, then this is what Craig is referring to. However, if we're talking about we generate a lead, should I wait till Monday evening at 7 o'clock to call that lead back? Absolutely not. The sooner you call that lead back, the better opportunity you'll have to convert that lead. So if we're on the phone right now and a lead comes in, if you follow up with that lead immediately, as in right now, it's far more likely that not only you'll reach them, but that you'll have a great conversation and determined timing and motivation with that prospect because they're thinking about real estate. So don't wait in following up with the leads that you generate. What Craig is referring to is you don't reach prospects the first time every time, nor are you in a position where you can always call back prospects the moment that they make a request. So
right, if you're in a listing, that's the whole point here.
Sure.
If you're with another seller on a listing appointment, and a lead comes in, well, it's not like you're going to interrupt your listing appointment or interrupt the showing of a home, or when you're at little Johnny's soccer game. There's that's the whole beauty of this is
there are extenuating circumstances.
It allows you to shut the cell phone off for a bit and follow up with these people. But James, the point that James is making is if you are available. You're sitting in your office, you are available and a lead comes in, absolutely, call them back as soon as you can.
Right. But that's the point. As soon as you are available, that's the difference is you get to determine when you're available. They're not calling your cell phone. No one's calling you. They're requesting information. You are calling them back at your leisure. What I'm suggesting, though, is the best time to do that is as quickly as you're available to do it. And you'll see that that'll come through loud and clear in the results that you're getting. We know that it's important that you get on with your week. We love to do these calls first thing Monday morning because it really puts you in a great mindset to begin the week. And it is so easy, particularly in the beginning of the program here, to fall back into your old ways. And we don't want that to happen. So every Monday, we start the week off discussing the system, answering all of your questions, making sure that you're going to continually progress with the system. I know that there are a lot of you that have questions remaining, no question. Please make sure that you're reaching out to your coach. You have your coach's phone number. You have their email address. Any questions that you have, make sure you're in contact with your coach. They're great people. They really understand the system, both from a teaching perspective and perhaps even more importantly, from an experience perspective as well. Make sure you pick their brains. Any questions that you have that maybe you feel are unclear or unanswered, shoot them an email. Ask your coach. They will be more than happy to set aside time to either talk to you or to reply in detail to anything that you have on your mind. And Craig, I think you'll find that that those students that really resource their coaches the most are always the most successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a proven fact. Those of you that participate on all of these calls and those of you that reach out to your coach are going to be the most successful. So we're probably preaching to the choir because we're talking to those of you that are actually with us here today. But do take advantage of your coach. Many of you have consultations this week. You can email any of your questions to them. Our next group call is going to be on Thursday, where James and I are going to do the role play call and help you convert the leads that you're generating. We're going to talk about what to do and what to say with those leads. And then we are this Friday going to look at some of the ads that you've been running. So you can upload your advertisements to the coaching site, the ad clinic, and we'll take a look at some that are great and some that aren't so great and talk about why. So we'll let everyone get back to work and go out and sell some houses. James and Rick, thank you very much for helping us here this morning.
Thanks, everybody. We'll look forward to speaking to you soon. Best of luck, everyone.
Anytime, Craig.
Thank you all for joining. This officially ends the webinar for this morning. Have a great afternoon and week.